we're discussing communication in new relationships with Chelsea Hayes from The Blocks. That's my friend. Watch and or listen while we tackle tough and sometimes taboo topics filmed live over drinks. This platform allows us to articulate our thoughts and challenge our beliefs. This is SipTalk. Grab a drink and enjoy. Cheers. All right, we are live. This is SipTalk, episode 252. My name is Justin DiGiulio, joined by James, the Boswell, philosopher, philanthropist, philanderer, philatelist, phlebotomist, man of many PHs, and Chelsea Hayes from New Mexico via New Jersey. Chelsea,
That's
go ahead and
right.
introduce yourself.
Yeah. Hey, everyone. My name is Chelsea Hayes. I currently live in New Mexico. I am originally from New Jersey. Haven't lived in New Jersey, though, since 2019, so it's been a little bit. But, you know, Justin, when you told me you're living in Jersey, I was like, oh, I can give you all the spots. And, I'm the founder of EbenezerHats. We focus on custom wide-brim hats for women with thick hair, braids like myself, various head shapes. So that way, when you buy a hat from me, you are able to purchase another hat in another color and in the size that you need. So.
All right. And Chelsea and I met, 3 weeks ago at the Blocks.
It doesn't even feel like it's only been 3 weeks. It feels like it's been years.
It feels like it's been a while. I think maybe because it was so intense. So those of you, I don't think I've talked about this on air at all. But
you might have hinted about it a little bit, but
so I'll explain what it was. Chelsea and I both signed up for this small business and startup workshop that took place in Oklahoma. That was also a competitive reality show, and that was quite the experience. I think I'm curious, Chelsea, because I haven't really spoken with anybody else, especially on air. I'm curious what your take home was, and really, this is a small business and startup workshop, so it was really there. We learned a lot, but it was also the experience of being effectively on reality, being filmed. We weren't on TV yet. So I'm curious what your first impressions or initial experiences were on the Blocks.
Yeah, great question. So for me, I've worked in production before, so I've seen the behind the scenes, but actually being the one who's like being interviewed and like they want to mic me up and stuff like that was different. And it was exciting, but it was also nerve-wracking at the same time. I'm generally a person who can talk about anything, but like when they're like, yeah, tell us about your business and tell us why it's good, and you're like, oh, okay, yeah, this is why, like, and you're just word vomit, right? And you're trying to make sure you don't sound stupid on TV.
I think that was the part that got me. Is this, the business that I went there for was a really new business, and I was there to develop the business and really feel out, where the business was going to go and what I was going to do with it. And right off the rip, they're like, all right, introduce yourself to us and tell us about your business. And also, by the way, you like have to have kind of a succinct idea of what your business is to explain it. And I'm like, we just sell shit. I don't even know. I never really played the game that we sell. I don't know. So let me just ask you this: I think what brought a lot of people together was kind of the uber amount of stress and anxiety that first day, or really what we would call day zero, induced. So what was your experience with the first day? Like how stressful was that for you?
Yeah, well, it was definitely stressful in the sense of like I got there in like the early afternoon, but when I got to the casino, my room actually wasn't even ready yet. So I told him, I was like, it's fine. Like, I'll just like figure it out. So, luckily the like casino staff, they were like super nice and they like let me keep my suitcases like in a little spot. So I knew I had to do like my intro interview. So I was like rushing, like, okay, let me change. And like, I changed in like one of the bathrooms. Like, I didn't even care. I was like, I just got to do this. I got to get nice. Like I had an airport outfit on. I was like, I'm going to look good for my intro. So I knew what I was going to wear. I grabbed stuff, and it's funny because it's like Ebony and Tiffany, they were like, why didn't you say something? We would have had you like change an arm. I was like, I just met you guys. Like, I was like, I can do this. Like, I'm adaptable. Listen, I worked for the military at one point in my life. Like I can adapt to situations. But yeah, I echo what you said. Like, we very much though had a lot of stress, right? A lot of people were like, oh, I think my intro video was like horrible and all this stuff. But I mean, like I said, I worked in production. They're always going to make you look good for the most part, unless you do something really crazy. Then they might air it. But
They'll have to try really hard with mine because I had no idea what I was saying. But yeah, I think that was the thing is you're kind of thrust into this group of strangers,
yeah,
right? And then on top of that, like you're in this unknown territory. We're in fucking Oklahoma. We're at this giant complex. There's a casino. Not that we were even the place was huge enough we didn't even
you didn't
close to the casino, but
realize.
It was big enough that there could be a whole casino there, and we didn't even know it existed half the time. And then you're around strangers, you're in a weird place, you're getting mic'd up, you're doing things for the first time. And I think, and most of us are like adults that are in our regular lives, very confident and people who, while we may push ourselves, we're not in such complicated, unknown territory. And I think for a lot of people, it was very nerve wracking. And they wanted to, at least me, for me, I wanted to get my bearings and be like, all right, so, I mean, you would see people in the hotel and you're like, wait, are you part of this thing? Because I don't want to be like, yo, are you on the reality TV show too?
That sounds like walking around with schizophrenia.
I think
yeah, maybe a little bit.
It's like everyone here is a spy. I can't trust anybody.
Well,
there's lights everywhere. There's cameras everywhere.
Yeah. All right. So, I just had a couple questions for you, about the blocks. But what do you think was the most rewarding aspect? So we were there for 7 days in total, 5 days of filming. And it was a very intensive business course where we had to compete at the end of the day. Go ahead, James.
Did they pay for your hotel rooms?
We had to cover a portion of the cost.
It was just incidentals, though. I think.
Yeah. It was a pretty expensive production. So
yeah.
So question for you: what was the most rewarding aspect of the entire week?
Yeah, I think for me, it really was the connections. I mean, and then having the opportunity to have like those one-on-one consults that we did with each judge. I mean, it's invaluable. I mean, these people are experts. They've been in business or businesses that they've either sold, traded, all this stuff. And to be able to like sit down and have true just like conversations about your business and questions that you may have, I think that was absolutely invaluable. I mean, people only dream to talk to people in those areas of life. And you have to know somebody. We had the opportunity to just do it because we applied to be on a show and they're like, yeah, we want you, So I think that definitely was the most rewarding of just having the opportunity to make such rewarding connections. I mean, look, me and you, we're doing this podcast together. So
I'll tell you, I watched every season just as homework, and really, I'm going to fucking watch every single episode, which I did. And then of course, literally like 5 days before we went there, they released a new season. I was like, fuck, now I really have to watch this one. So I watched it all. The one thing that I noticed at the end of every season was the last episode. People were like, oh, these are my friends for life. I've made such a family. And I'm like, motherfucker, you were there for 5 days.
Yeah, you didn't believe
it. Then going through it, I was like, holy shit. Like, these people are like literally holding my hands. People are crying on people's shoulders. And like literally 2 days ago, we didn't fucking know each other. So we actually did make some connections. And then I'll second what you said, just to drive it home, is that as a business owner, a lot of the time, like, how many other people do you know in your town, your city, that are making hats for women's hair with different size? Like, do you know anybody else that's doing? No. Exactly. Running our own businesses, don't have anybody that like can give them the valuable feedback with the amount of experience that is needed. People can give you feedback all the time about your business, but they'll come in and be like, oh, you should probably do this in that color because I don't like this color. It's like, okay, but like, actually, most people have been buying the color you don't like, so fuck your opinion. That's not helpful. But having the actual business strategies and the consults, and then having people who have built, most of them, many very successful businesses, breaking down your business and building it up, I thought was cool. All right, before we get into, we didn't even tease the topic here, which is, how do you properly communicate when you're trying to get to know someone, which was pretty relevant 3 weeks ago or so. Just real quick, I want to give you guys each a spot here. You are opening up a new location. Do you want to just mention that? Share what you're looking at there?
Sure, yeah. So today's Thursday, right? Oh my gosh. So yesterday I had a ribbon cutting / grand opening for a storefront that I had the opportunity to be in. I was a part of this business accelerator program actually a few weeks before I went on the blocks, and it's 2 phases. So phase 1, you go through a 6-week course, learn the ins and outs of starting a business, and then you have an opportunity to apply to phase 2, which is that opportunity to have a storefront. And I'm in there with 2 other businesses, and it was really exciting because I'm still in the product development stage of my hats, but I was encouraged to still apply to phase 2 because there's still other ways, you can pivot and, still get your business name out there. So now I'm focused on like selling scrunchies that look like these. And they're more in my branding colors. And I also have the opportunity to sell shirts that are in brand. So it's really exciting time. And I'm still taking everything I learned from the blocks to do all this. So yeah.
Business Accelerator is a funny name for a program because it immediately makes me think of a particle accelerator. Where you just take things, make them move really fast and crash into each other. And the fact that you're in a storefront with 2 other businesses tells me that this Business Accelerator program is staying on brand. Let's crash these 3 businesses together and see which one pops out.
I just want to say real quick, happy birthday to Lisa. I believe Lisa just said hello from YouTube. I believe it is Lisa's birthday today. I might be off on this, but I'm pretty sure. Happy birthday, Lisa. James, what's going on, my friend, in sunny South Carolina?
We're getting lots of thunderstorms. That's about the top news item right now. It's boring as crap down here. Mortgages still slow. I'm just coping with the existential dread of this election. I really would like to see the Dems find a different candidate than Biden. So I've been immersed in news cycles of politics coverage and looking at political predictions markets and despairing.
Well, I don't want to get too much into that today.
No, but that's you asked.
No, yeah, fair. I did. All right, guys. One thing I just want to tease, though, and then we'll hit our topic, is tomorrow in my office we are doing a hot sauce contest. It'll be live at 4 p.m. Eastern time. So if you want to watch a bunch of adults cry like babies, some of them have panic attacks, they will have signed
what is the content?
Waivers. We have 12 hot sauces, and you work your way up from a Tabasco, a Sriracha, a Valentina.
Those aren't even hot.
But that's the point. Is you got a few that are pretty light, and then it steps up a little bit. I'll send you the whole lineup. I did a little taste testing today in kind of the mid to high range to figure out what order we were going to put them in. I am physically beat up from just the range.
It's a shame I can't be there because I would be a shoo-in.
I will save you these hot sauces. We had like 20 hot sauces the last time we did it. One person ended up in the hospital.
That sounds like a good contest.
They just needed to drink milk. Like it would have been fine.
So that's when you fail. That's when you fail. So you work your way up, but when you go for the milk or the yogurt or the ice cream, that's throwing in the towel. You're instantly out of the contest.
Are you allowed to drink water?
No. There's nothing.
Dang.
Yeah. So we'll see how it goes. But if you want to tune in live, we'll probably have it on Instagram, maybe TikTok, or Instagram, maybe Facebook. And we'll try to publish it afterwards. So today we are talking about, and now it's taking us long enough time to get into this. We are talking about how to properly communicate when you're trying to get to know someone. And the first piece of advice I have on that is really context matters, right? Like, where are you meeting this person? Is it a first date? Is it a business startup program? Really context matters, and how well you know someone, I think, already, because you can go into something. I was having a conversation with my agents today. I'm like, it's not a bad idea if you're going to meet with a client, you do a little bit of a shallow dive on their life. Look up their LinkedIn page, just get an idea of what they do, if they lived in a different state before. But then also, when you first meet them, you don't go spouting out everything you know about them.
Absolutely. Yeah. Because it kind of sounds like you stalked them. I mean, which is kind of what you did, but
you did, and that's weird.
You don't want them to know that. Yeah.
But so just don't do it. Why not let them reveal themselves to you naturally?
That's in New York. Sometimes I meet some higher profile people, or some people that are reasonably known for X accomplishments, and I really try to do as very shallow of a dive as possible.
To me, if you're meeting somebody for the first time and you know something about them because they're famous, like many years ago, I met a famous actor at a hotel that I was working at, and I didn't realize who he was at first, but then I was like, oh, you're in all these movies that I like. So like, for me to have knowledge of like his professional accomplishments wasn't weird because he's a public figure. But for someone that's just like in the business world, you're like having a client meeting or something, like I would say like researching what their business does would be like the limits. Whatever is available on like their public facing website, but like researching like their life history or whatever, to me would be weird. And if I were in a
That's
meeting with
fair.
somebody
Yeah.
and they're like, "Yeah, we Googled you," and well, first of all, you're not going to find much on me, but like they're like, I would just be
You're
like, "Why
hidden.
are you doing that? Why wouldn't if you have questions, just ask me when we're face to face?" Like,
Yeah.
So let
And
me
I
ask.
think social media though affects
I'm
that,
not on
right?
any social media.
I'm not
I
saying you
have
are.
an
Yeah.
insanely low profile.
But I
Yeah,
think
zero
back
profile.
to Justin's point, like you look, right? Because I mean, almost everyone is on social media, especially if you're doing like a business meeting or if you're meeting up somebody for the first time for a date, you probably met them on a dating app. You probably didn't meet them naturally, like in the grocery store, you know? So it's like you're collecting information just
I don't want to
readily
do
now.
that. If I meet somebody on a dating app, like
Hmm.
we'll have our chat, and if we meet up for a date, great. But like the date
Hmm.
is a dice roll, and that's how it's supposed to be.
And you want to have that conversation organically, not
Yeah.
Yeah,
not like, oh, so I noticed your aunt has a Hyundai and I have a
Yeah,
Hyundai.
you
How do you know my
shouldn't.
aunt has it like that? How do you know that? Like, it's.
Yeah.
I think
right.
that,
It's
in order to have an organic conversation, you can't really know. I would probably want to know less about somebody going on a first date than I would going into a business.
Yeah. Be pleasantly surprised.
What else, guys? What am I missing here about context?
Well, I think you hit it because you said it's like a business meeting, it's a friendship. Like it depends what is
So
happening.
I mean, it defines the boundaries of your social interaction because, like, for an
Mhm.
easy example, what kind of jokes are in bounds or out of bounds? And if you're in a business or professional meeting, most stuff is going to be out of bounds. If you're on a first date, most stuff is going to be in bounds
so
because you want to be able to tell the kind of jokes that you normally would on a first date. And if they don't like them, that just means you're not a good match. But,
so
like, you're not trying to date the person that you're trying to, like, ink a deal with. So it doesn't matter if you agree politically or socially or have a similar sense of humor. All that matters is like, do the numbers line up, and do you think that the partnership will be profitable for both of you? And
so
so, like, you have to know what are the constraints on my behavior in this meeting.
well, that would be the context. I think also though is knowing what your goal in that situation is.
Hmm.
Right, and then also knowing whether it's fair enough or the right move to share your goal, right? Like, so if it is a date, like, is it really a date, right? Does that other person, are you just hanging out, the other person thinks you're hanging out, and your real goal is to make it a date?
Oh, that's devastating when you're like, oh, it's great that we're
That's
finally going
awkward.
on a date, and they're like, oh, this is a date? Oh no.
So
Oh
uh,
gosh.
Chelsea, have you ever been in that situation where you've like been hanging out with someone and that wasn't clear?
Yeah, it's a few times, unfortunately. And I mean, I think a lot of people say this, right? Like they're always like, "Oh, well, no, I was clear. Like, I wasn't thinking this was a date or whatever." But I think that's also where it's like sometimes people's assumptions, right, take over, right? So if you have certain assumptions, that also can define how the conversation or the experience goes. So that's something you got to keep in mind too.
I think the importance is that, and we're talking about communication, is that you communicate very clearly what it is that you want. And even if it is a business meeting, you have an agenda, right?
Mm-hmm.
You can't pussyfoot around the agenda and then just leave the meeting.
Well,
Yeah.
there's a difference though, because, and I would say that this is actually true of both first dates and business meetings, is you have to think about in terms of negotiation, right? So in a business meeting, if you're trying to negotiate something, and we talked about this a long time ago when we did a full podcast on negotiating, but you need to know, like, what is your walk away point where their offer is not worth even considering, and you need to know, like, you need to have kind of a set strategy for how you're going to open the negotiations and what you're going to ask for, what you really want, and what's the minimum that you will take. And some people wouldn't like me phrasing dates in the same way, but I think it's actually very much the same,
I
where,
would agree. Yeah.
like, in business, if you're in a business negotiation, you're not going to tell the other party what your walk away point is or like what your compromise is. You're just going to lead with, like, you're going to ask for more than you think you can get and then negotiate down from there. But you're not going to tell the other person what, like, how far down you're willing to negotiate. And in a date, it's very much the same way, where, like, you're going to have some deal breakers in terms of, like, for me, one of them is, like, if they have kids, I'm not interested. And like, I'll be very clear up front about that one. But there are probably other ones that I'm not going to be as clear about by design, because I want to see what happens. But you need to have kind of, and yeah, I think that you don't want to reveal everything that you're looking for in a first date.
Well, I think that that goes to kind of the next step in the progression is being able to read the social cues and know when to bring these things up. And no, so Chelsea, you had kind of mentioned in our cheat sheet here about somebody getting quiet. Can you elaborate?
Yeah.
You know, you're sitting with somebody and then they're very quiet.
Yeah. So like that can mean a lot of different things for a person, but like if they get quiet, is it that they are just like listening to you intently? Or I know for me personally, like I'm an extrovert, right? So I talk with my hands a lot and I generally get excited about certain topics. So sometimes when I get really quiet, people are like, "Oh, are you okay?" And it's like, "Oh no, like I'm good. Like I just don't have much else to say or I just want to listen intently." So like that can also be something where it's like don't assume too, right? Like just ask,
Well,
or yeah.
you can also take a
Hmm.
pause and read their body language because
Yep.
they could
Hmm.
be being quiet because they're bored out of their mind.
Well, let me
That too.
ask this: when you first meet someone, I notice this a lot in young kids. When a kid goes to a new place,
Mhm.
they are very reserved, very quiet, almost afraid to like even sit down. And then literally like 7 minutes later, they're just running around like their hair's on fire. I think people are very much the same way. Like it takes a little while to break people out of people. Kids are people too, by the way. They're,
Yes.
not very curious people. James would disagree, but listen, if you follow them long enough, they turn into people, from what I've read. Uh, but people, it takes a little while to get them to break out of their shells too. And some people you can break a little bit more out of their shells. But I think one of my probably greatest strengths, especially in business, is getting somebody to that comfortability factor where they feel like they're in the familiar, right? Like where you're hanging out
Yeah.
with an old friend, where you can share the stuff that's on your mind, where you're really open, and that I think when you are trying to feel somebody out for what their bottom line number might be in business, that person's going to give you a little more, show you a little more of their hand than they would otherwise.
Well, I mean, your point about like kids being quiet and reserved for the first few minutes when they're in like a new or unfamiliar setting, they're doing what everybody at all ages do in a new setting, which is take some time and try and evaluate the context, figure out what the rules are for them, because kids might not be as good at it as adults, but it's trying to figure out what am I allowed to do here, and if it's like some kind of like party or whatever, the kids quickly figure out, oh, I can just run around like I'm set on fire because all the other kids are doing that. So cool.
Um, Chelsea,
Hmm.
speaking of kind of feeling things out, pronouns. You want to advise on pronouns here?
Sure. So I mean, I'm not big on pronouns myself per se, like, but it is a thing, right? Like it is something that is important to people, especially now. So pronouns are like, do you prefer like I guess my pronouns would be she, her, hers, right? You all may as men may choose he, him, his. But there's also they, them, theirs. I think there's even like an X in there now. So asking, right? Asking people's pronouns sometimes is polite, right? Because it's like you don't want to assume how someone prefers to be identified in conversations. Like I said, I personally don't like always identify with it, but
So
it's just something to be
let me
aware of.
ask. Should you?
Mhm,
My thinking
mhm,
is you.
mhm.
I wouldn't necessarily. I feel like it could be off-putting to ask in certain
Okay.
scenarios because it might be like, yo, you kind of look like a girl, but I'm not sure if you're a guy.
No, but
Yeah,
I
yeah,
think that could
I'm
be
with
very off.
Justin on this one.
I think that could be very off-putting. So now it also could be off-putting if you called somebody by the pronoun they don't prefer, but that's
Mhm.
also using
Well,
your inference on what you think. So you're kind of running this risk one way or the other. I
I
think.
think that there's a bigger risk one side than the other, which is like I don't think that it's something that you need to bring up, and if you use the wrong pronoun unintentionally, unless this person is a flaming asshat, they're going to be forgiving to you and be like, "Oh, actually, it's he, not she." And you're like, "Oh, okay, cool, sorry, my bad." And they'll be understanding because they get that all the time. And as long as you're not making an active attempt to be a dick to them, then they're going to be cool.
So you're
And
saying
if they,
it's
huh?
kind of like you're saying it's kind of like CrossFit. How do you know if somebody does CrossFit?
Oh, don't worry.
They'll tell you.
Yeah, I can't. How do you know? Do you do CrossFit? Like,
Right. So I would say like I can't think of any setting in which I'm going to ask somebody for their pronouns or give my own pronouns, because to me it doesn't matter. And if I get it wrong, it's not because I'm trying to like criticize you or anything like that. It's just like it's something that's only important if it's only important if you say that it's important to yourself and you announce it. But I think the vast majority of people don't care, so I just don't bring it up. I
think
won't care if you make
scenario
me
that,
care.
that's fair. I think another scenario though that this happens is like if you're in a group setting, right? Like, and maybe everyone's going around and introducing themselves. I've just seen this in situations I've been in where, sometimes that comes up. It's like, someone will introduce themselves or it's asked like, oh, tell us your pronouns, right? And it's just a way also to get to know somebody, right? Because then you're like, oh, okay, like I didn't know.
How liberal are you? Oh, you're that. Very liberal. Very liberal.
Okay, yeah.
Like if I were in a group setting, I would just ignore that question. I would just go and answer all the other questions, because again, like to me, it's a distraction in 99% of the cases.
Yeah, and I don't actually think it's that. I mean, listen, I'm in New York City. It's not that prevalent, and most people are pretty forgiving as long as you are not intentionally being an asshole.
Right. And that also, again, just goes back to context. Is how are you messaging yourself? And people won't get upset if they can tell that you're trying to be understanding and you made a mistake, versus you trying to be a dick and be biased or bigoted. One of your questions here I want to discuss, which is, can extroverts and introverts get along? And I would say it depends on the context. Like I'm deeply introverted.
Contextual.
I would not be able to date an extrovert.
Okay.
Because fundamentally we would be incompatible. They would want to do things that I wouldn't like, and they would get frustrated with me being happy, just chilling, or me having alone time. And so it would be a fundamental incompatibility of, I want to go out to the bar. Will you come with me? No, I don't want to be around people right now.
I like going out with extroverted friends because then you don't have to say anything, and they can just start all the conversations, and you just get to kind of sit back and choose where you would, providing you have some social skill and you're able to interject into conversation, which is tough. Hopefully we'll get there in this conversation, but you're basically, allowed, they are opening the conversations and you're jumping in when you feel like it.
I mean, I'll give you two examples here. Cause like, I know James, you talked about like kind of the relationship
Start with the first example, please.
Sure.
No, start with the second.
So, for me, right, like I said, I'm an extrovert, and I have girlfriends who are introverts, right? And they have said to me, like, Chelsea, like, you're my extrovert, like, you're my extroverted friend, like, I rely on you to help me get out the house, do fun things, all that stuff. And like, I mean, now we live states away from each other, but like, they still like, will be like, oh, we've met someone who's an extrovert too, but they're nothing like you, like, it's just things like that. So I think, yes, they can get along, but like you said, it kind of depends on like the context also / relationship, right? Because a friend, I don't live with that person unless, we just had to be roommates, but I don't live with them. I can kind of just be like, all right, bye, go be your introverted self. I'm going to go be my extroverted self with somebody else,
I'll be on the balcony shouting at the neighbors.
Yeah, I've had friends that are extroverts, and it's great. I can pick and choose when I'm hanging out with them, and I know what I'm signing up for. But I wouldn't, at this point in my life, I know enough about myself to say that a relationship with an extrovert would not work.
And I understand that, yeah. Because like my second example is, so I was married to somebody who was more of an introvert, but he had like, I guess you can say extroverted tendencies. Some people like to call them. So that was like,
he was an alcoholic. He was an alcoholic.
No, actually, really, like he would, but like not really. I mean, I don't even drink. Like I'm literally drinking ginger ale in a wine glass. So
I won't tell anybody, but it's too late.
I don't care. I'm not like embarrassed by it. But I mean, in that relationship, I echo what you say, James, because it's like we were great, at certain points, but it's like, yeah, if he wanted to be inside, like there was a point where he's like, I just want to be inside every weekend. And I was like, oh, that's not going to work for me, but you either find a balance and make it work or you don't. So
I just think that it's harder to find a balance the farther you are away on that spectrum.
Yeah, I get that.
Especially if you're spending a lot of time together.
Yeah.
Definitely.
So let's talk about body language.
This one's
simple.
fun.
You think? I think if you get really good at body language, it's literally like speaking like in code. Like you can
Yeah.
decode. You can
Mhm.
decode what other people are thinking.
Mhm.
Uh, and being able to read kind of whether someone is open to having conversation with you. Like, I gave the example of a wallflower. A lot of people hang out, on the exterior of whatever activity, but if they're facing the open, they're probably open to someone having conversation with them. But if they're standing kind of facing the wall on their phone, or somebody who's standing, if you walk into a bar, you'll notice some people are just facing the bar, looking down at their phone, and then other people are kind of like hanging out at the bar.
Yeah,
Like
are
this.
they looking around the room at all?
Yeah. And I think also like people watching is a thing, right? So it's like sometimes even if they are kind of just scanning the room and everything, it doesn't always necessarily mean that they are open for you to approach them. They might literally just be enjoying the fact that they're people
No,
watching.
but that's more of a signal than
Mhm.
them being
Mhm.
completely closed off.
For sure. Yeah.
So,
Mhm.
how would you signal to someone that you are open then?
I would say, yeah, like you kind of talked about at the bar, like, if you're like talking with somebody, right? And then like, I don't know, that person, you see them being like, oh, like you want a drink or something like that. Like that's kind of like where you're seeing them engage with the crowd, right? If they're engaging with the crowd, you're like, oh, okay, they're somebody who wants to talk.
Well, what if they're not engaging with the crowd? Maybe you just walked in, they were standing or sitting at the bar.
Mm-hmm.
Um, I noticed that that person will shift their body open towards you,
Mm-hmm.
right? And that's even crossing their legs towards you or against you, right? If it's towards you, they may be more inclined to be open to you. Or if they're shifting their body open to you
Mm-hmm.
versus not even making any adjustments, or just any adjustments aren't directed towards you. If you're kind of watching that person out of the corner of your eyes, you'll know if that person's okay to say, just kind of like a "how's it going today" type thing, if they're open to that conversation. Um, and also where their hands are facing. So here's something that most people don't even think about at all, is whether their hands are open or closed, right, or down. So somebody whose hands are facing
Mm-hmm.
upward, they're going to be much more receptive. Versus somebody who doesn't want people talking to them, they might have their hands down or in their lap or in their pockets. Their body language is going to be much more closed.
Yeah,
You follow me? Um, and then just when you are talking to somebody, knowing whether or not they want you to continue talking to them by
that's a
reading
big
their
one.
body language, right? So
Mhm.
uh, I would say, but aside from body language, if their conversation is very short, kind of non-open-ended answers or statements to your questions, they're not looking to continue that conversation.
Well, and this
Exactly.
is away from the body language thing,
Yeah.
but just a general tip for conversations is give the conversation a little bit of room to breathe, where like you don't need to constantly follow up with a question or a statement after they're done talking. Sometimes wait 5 or 10 seconds and see if they continue the conversation in some way. Give them a chance to show some interest on their part, because a lot of people will be polite and just let you continue talking to them, but it doesn't mean that they're interested in talking to you. They're just too demure to say, I'm not interested in talking any further.
Yeah,
But
especially
give
with a
them the chance to
stranger.
show their interest.
Yeah, I had a long ride, long second leg of my trip back on the plane, where the plane got pretty delayed and we were already on the plane. And the guy that was sat right next to me, we started off very small talk, like 3, 6, 8 minutes between, the next sentence. And then slowly it became like we were just having the fucking best time of our lives, involved in conversation with like 3 other people, because we had nothing else to do. Exchange contact information. This guy does a lot of business out in New Jersey, et cetera, et cetera. But it started very, very slow, where it was literally like 6 to 8 minutes in between sentences, you know, and then it just slowly we closed the gap, and then it just turned into a conversation. Another couple of things to notice that somebody wants to end the conversation is that they turn their body away from you, or they start limiting eye contact, or they get
Yeah.
kind of fidgety. They just look a little uncomfortable. They're kind of moving around a little bit. But you got to look. You got to be. I mean, you can't be like watching someone's elbows and fingers as you're talking to them, trying to make eye contact, but looking back down at their fingers and elbows, and looking. But you got to be conscious of it. It has to be something that's
Yeah.
on your mind. And I think in the beginning you might have to consciously do it, but pretty soon you'll realize how natural it is to just kind of pick up on people's body language.
Yeah.
Um,
And I think a point also to that, which will probably segue to certain other topics I know we want to discuss today, but also it's like, how do you navigate away from a conversation, right? I don't know if we necessarily like said that. Like, what are things you say? Like, do you say like, "Hey, it was nice talking to you," and bye, or do you not say anything at all and you just turn away and hope that they don't say anything?
I think that a lot of the reason we're having this conversation is that like
Mhm.
people do try that, and a lot of people
Mhm.
just don't pick up on these damn social cues that you would think
Exactly.
are so
Mhm.
fucking obvious, and you're like literally trying to get out of the conversation, and this person's just like, "So what are you doing this weekend?" And you're like, "Yo, I just said nice talking to you," not like
Yeah.
it's nice to continue to speak with you. Just keep talking.
Mhm.
I want to address something here because I've got a funny story about it. But one of the topics that we've got is what are some good questions to ask when you're speaking with somebody for like the first time.
Mhm.
And before we get to that, I want to introduce one rule, which is don't ask any questions that you aren't comfortable answering yourself. And here's the
Exactly.
story. One of my friends who no longer lives in Charleston, we would go out and he was very often trying to like meet women at bars. Okay, fine. And he would ask for my advice about like how we could do better at this. So I had some tips for him. And at the time, he was working a retail job, making enough money to pay his bills, but he wasn't rich by any stretch, right? And he was a little bit self-conscious about like his earnings potential, and he felt like women were judging him for it. Which, fair or unfair, that's how he felt. And so he's like, I don't like having to talk about my job when I'm first talking to a girl. I was like, that's fine. And he's like, well, what do I do if they ask me? I say, I don't know. Like, if they ask you out of the blue, just be like, I had a long week. I keep work at work. And you just move on from there. But what he would do is he'd go up and start talking to a girl and he'd be like, oh, so what do you do?
What do you
And it's
do?
like,
Yeah.
Idiot. I'm sorry.
right. But you get the point. It's like, dude, like, you say you don't want to talk about this. That means you can't ask her.
Yeah.
Oh man! So now's a good time for me to introduce the answer to last week's bar trivia question. I don't know if you remember this one, James, but
I sure
something
don't.
extraordinarily unusual happened on the 6th of May, 1978, at 12:34 p.m. What was it?
Oh, yeah, it was the dates like 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8.
It was 12:34, 5 for May, 6th of May, 78.
Yeah.
1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8.
Yeah, that's what I said.
Well, you just
You
clarifying.
didn't say it just like that, though.
Yeah, you got to spell out the answer. You got to spell out the answer.
I said the date was in numerical order: 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8.
So hang tight, and we'll have the this week's bar trivia question. I think this one's pretty easy as well, but we'll see. We'll introduce that towards the end of the episode, which we are fastly approaching. So what's next here? Oh, this is what I really wanted to talk about: text and phone conversations.
This one. Yeah.
So when you get a text, what's the answer in terms of how quickly you should reply to that text?
You're going to get a lot of different responses to this. But for me, I'm like, if I want to text you, I'm going to respond. I don't care if you took a day to respond. I'm going to respond. Like,
here's the thing. I know people. All right, spend a lot of time around people, and James gets an exception on this one because he has the original brick phone from 1982.
Nice.
No, he doesn't. He was forced by his carrier to upgrade to a newer phone. All you motherfuckers have your phone in your hand all the fucking time. So if I'm sending you a text message, I know you saw it. There's no question about it. So how I feel is what I said something that requires urgent attention. If it's not, I don't mind waiting. If it is something that requires urgent attention, and listen, I work with real estate agents who you would think would be on top of their shit, but they're not. And they're all the time showing me their phone, showing me conversations.
mm-hmm.
I just watch people walk around. I watch just naturally people on the subway, people in restaurants, people in the office. They're watching their phone all the time. So, sorry to jump down both of you guys' throat on this one, but my answer to how quickly should you respond is: what is the context? What is the subject?
I would say in a relationship context,
mm-hmm.
my answer is match their energy.
In the beginning of a relationship.
Pretty much at any time, really.
Anytime. Okay. I don't know. Match their energy. So, okay. So if you take a day to text the person you're talking to back, you would take another, or you would expect them to take a day to respond to you too.
If you're taking an entire day, yet you spent 4.5 hours on Instagram that day, you are saying to someone, which you do, because literally fucking every person I know spends 3 hours plus on Instagram or TikTok. If you're taking a day to get back to that person, yet you scrolled for 90 minutes on one platform alone, what you were saying to them is you're a very low priority for me.
That's kind of my point. Is like, if they're responding immediately, you know, like a minute or two for them to think and type it out or whatever, then that kind of sets the expectation for you to respond somewhat immediately. If they're waiting an hour to respond to you, then match their energy. If you send them a text and they don't respond for another day, match their energy. In fact, I would say like double down on their energy, and like you should probably just cast that one aside. But
what if you don't know why they took long to respond? Like, you know what I mean? Like everybody's doing something,
well,
so you never know.
I mean, you can use some inference here. Where like if you send them a text on a Saturday and it turns out that they were camping that weekend and had no signal, okay, fine. There's an explanation there.
They were probably on fucking Instagram now still.
Yeah.
I just know people, and
yeah, but like I still think that this principle holds regardless. Like if there's an exception to be made, then let them ask for that exception.
So listen, as a real estate agent, I have for many years, like the 14 years prior to now, answered everybody almost instantaneously, unless I was, and even when I drive, like I literally drive with one phone in one hand, the other phone in the other hand, text messages, YouTube, email, phone call, like with my driving my fucking elbows basically, and driving stick shift.
And you're against self-driving cars.
And I'm against self-driving cars. But hopefully, even on the motorcycle,
New Jersey PD doesn't come for you.
I got busted a couple of months ago, actually. Even though I was approaching a stoplight when I whipped out the phone, I thought that was a safe time to do it. But and even on the motorcycle, I used to talk through Siri and have her read me the messages, and then retype the messages. I have started recently, especially since I came back from the blocks. Now that I have a lot to do, going on full do not disturb, and not answering people for a couple hours in terms of blocks of time. And then what I have to do is I have to go into kind of recap mode and just answer a whole bunch of people and say, hey, sorry, I was busy working, And it's been very scary for me because a lot of people in my business have relied on me to close deals or give them whatever resource they need or to take this payment or to deal with their client in an instant at the fear of losing a deal, losing money, that I needed to answer them right away. So it's actually been very tough for me to step away from answering people right away. But I think, providing you generally, if I text them and then they text me back, I can't then wait another 2 hours to fucking answer them.
No, but if you have kind of blocks of time of the day where you just make it known, hey, I'm not going to be available, like, first of all, it's on them to adjust. And second, I would imagine your quality of life has shot up.
I mean, yeah, I would think so. For the most part, it does get a little stressful because I'm one of those inbox zero people. Like right now, I usually close the tab with my email before we start the podcast. I can see the tab says one email, and
you're stressed.
but usually I'll have 0 emails when we start the podcast and like 35 emails.
My inbox is at 19,047.
Yeah, I dislike people like you, James. Like, I don't understand it. Why? For what?
I get crazy anxiety over that. All right.
My view is like, if I miss something, then like, if it's important, they'll reach out to me again. Like, I don't let these things stress me out.
We actually reached out to you 16,411 times. How did you miss us?
Well, it was either not that important to them or more likely not that important to me. So,
I'm leaning with the second one because clearly.
No, like I'm telling you, man, like just shutting off a lot of the world has multitudes of positive consequences. It's like when I first got the house, like I'd be hanging out in the garage playing pool or like playing a video game or just like hanging out in the living room talking with people. And my phone would be in my bedroom 30 feet away. And I just wouldn't look at my phone for like 3 hours straight. And then people would be like, why didn't you respond to me? Like, because my phone wasn't on me. But you're home, aren't you? Yeah. Doesn't mean I have to answer my phone. Like, leave me alone, man.
I feel like we're segueing to ghosting, right? Yeah.
No, I wasn't ghosting them. I was just like, right now, I'm doing something that's more important than responding to your text message.
But James is not a big social media guy. He's not. He's not like, he doesn't carry his phone in his hand. He doesn't go sit at a restaurant and play on his phone. Whereas most people these days do that. And I'm inclined to do that whenever I go to a bar or restaurant, is just sit there on my phone. And it, especially if you're alone, it takes a little while to actually adjust, if you don't want to do that, to not be doing it. In regards to ghosting, is it ever okay? Business, friends, relationships.
Yes.
Chelsea?
Yeah. It's okay.
Give me a scenario, guys, where it would be okay.
I
Okay.
can give you one from my personal life.
Yeah, go for it, James.
About 4 years ago, I was dating this chick, and I was losing interest in the relationship. And the last time that her and I hung out, I could tell that like something happened that upset her. I couldn't confirm what it was, but I had a pretty good idea as to what it was. And then like she went out of town to like visit family or something.
This is when she was living with you, and you changed the locks, changed your phone number, and moved out of the state.
No, that would have been a pretty sweet way to go about it, but that would have been expensive. But yeah, she went out of town for like a week, and then like she came back. I sent her a text to see if she wanted to hang out, and she was like, "Oh, one of my friends came back," and then like I just never heard from her again. I was like, you know what? This is doing us both a favor.
Right, so
like,
she ghosted you, though.
Yeah, and I wasn't mad about it at all. I was like, you know what? This is making my life easier because now I don't have to like grapple with any decisions, and like nobody's feelings are hurt.
I guess, yeah.
I did read in the classifieds on the Charleston Craigslist, there was this girl that said she lost her phone and all of her contacts, but she really liked this guy, James, she was dating, and if anybody knew him, she'd like to have his number.
She knew my address.
All right,
your address. Okay.
You're up. When is it okay to ghost? You guys both seem like it's a really okay thing to do.
I mean, I'm not saying it's right to do, but there are certain situations that may call for it. And I think that goes back to our earlier point of like, well, if they don't pick up on the cues that like you're out, like sometimes you just have to ghost, because it's like you've told them like, oh yeah, I'm good. Like, wish you luck, and they still like are texting you like a lot and all this stuff or trying to reach out. And it's like, you just have to ghost at that point.
I think for women, it's more defensible than men because women have a justifiable fear of male aggression in the face of rejection. And ghosting is one of the more passive ways to deal with this and avoid the potential risks of a man losing his temper because you reject him.
Yeah, I can see that. But I
also
can see it both ways in a way too.
I think there's where
men are more of a threat to women than women are a threat to men.
Arguably.
Yeah, I can argue.
You can argue either way, but I'll lean in the direction of your point. Men physically are stronger. They have more testosterone, more aggression. Women are fucking batshit crazy.
Yeah, you can find edge cases that are going to prove me wrong.
I was like, you want to start a fight? No.
No. You can find edge cases that will prove me wrong, but the overall general trend and the crime statistics bear this out. Like I'm right on this one.
If you look at the crime, but I'm just saying that women can do crazy things as well.
Yes, I said you can find edge cases, but if you look at the overall population level statistics, men are a bigger threat to women than women are to men.
So here's my issue with ghosting.
Okay.
Is I think people are afraid to say, and maybe James, I think we lost Chelsea. Maybe I think you have a point into this, but people are afraid to say to someone that they aren't interested. All right, we got Chelsea back.
Sorry, y'all.
People are afraid to say to somebody that they're not interested. They have this fear of saying, "Hey, thanks for taking me out, but you know what? I'm really, I appreciate the time and the date, but I'm really not interested. Have a nice day or life." I think that's a really hard thing to say, and it's an easier way to just not answer that person again. But I think by the time that person has sent you the third message, and then you either put them on block or just let them send you the 4th, 5th, 6th, 7th message. Somewhere between that third message and block or the next 19 messages, you have to be like, I'm not really interested. And also like fucking save yourself the thumb strength and stop texting me.
I mean, I'll give you another quick example.
You have to do it nicely, but the problem is people these days are afraid of confrontation.
Yes, it's that they're afraid of that.
Maybe rightfully so. James had a point. Maybe rightfully so. I don't know.
I mean, here's another really quick story about ghosting. Is about 6 months ago, I went on a date with a girl that I met on a dating app. We went to a brewery. We had like 2 beers each. It was a polite and cordial conversation, but there was no chemistry. And I was going out of town for like the next week, and I was like, yeah, I'm not going to be around for a little while, but I'll let you know when I come back into town. And neither of us reached out to the other one again. And that was fine. Like, she didn't give me an explanation as to why she wasn't interested. I didn't give her an explanation as to why I wasn't interested. We probably both knew. My feelings aren't hurt. I would assume that hers aren't. Like,
But I guess, let me ask you this. You said that you would let her know when you were back in town. So did you actually mean that?
Maybe she thought you never came back.
I mean, maybe.
That's my thing.
Your question of whether I actually meant that or not, I can't say.
Well,
I honestly don't know.
I wouldn't be mad at you if you said you really didn't. I would then just say that. Like, I'm a big, like, just say how you feel. I'm not butthurt by most or really anything. I'm like, you're not interested? Okay, let's keep it pushing.
Yeah, but I think the clarity really helps rather than leaving people hanging. And I don't necessarily think you left her hanging. I mean, if she was interested, she could have reached back. You had your mobile phone outside of the town, right?
However, he talked about matching energy. So
Right, but it's know what? If she was genuinely interested, she could have reached out and be like, "Hey, are you back in town yet?" And then I probably been like, I enjoyed meeting you, but I don't think that there's chemistry here. I would have said that if I had to, but like, I never needed to.
Yeah, because nothing was said.
Speaking of ghosting, I recently found out from somebody that I used to work with, not in a romantic context, that they had blocked me, and this person came in and she was like, "Oh yeah, I'm sorry, I blocked you." I was like, I didn't know. I never.
Yeah, most of the time you wouldn't.
I never text you. I didn't reach out to you. I don't know if that burned more going back in that. It's like, hey, right back at you.
No, she wanted you to know.
I didn't know. I didn't.
That was targeted. She wanted you to know.
There's somebody who left my brokerage and went somewhere else and just assumed that I would have been pining for them to come. We need you here. We need you here. Don't quit. Come back. And I was just like, oh, good luck. Except I didn't even say good luck. I said nothing. And all right. Man, we're gonna miss a lot of stuff here. So
you said we didn't have enough.
let me introduce this week's bar trivia question before we run out of time. A high-speed electric train is traveling southeast at 90 kilometers per hour. The wind is blowing westward at 30 kilometers per hour. Now, please don't answer this question live, guys. You can tell me afterwards. So, traveling southeast 90 kilometers per hour, the wind is blowing westward at 30 kilometers per hour. In what direction will the smoke from the engine blow? Any inclination, guys?
Yep.
All right, fair enough. It's an easy one. It's an easy one. If you caught it,
it's very easy.
So, anything else we got to add on this topic? I mean, we got BAM FAM, we got verbal, nonverbal.
Is there a standard operating procedure for first date / hangout conversation? I would just say vodka and duct tape.
Love it. I don't know. Simple takeaways are just. Be true. Be true to yourself. That's what I say.
Yeah, I don't think there should be a standard operating procedure for a first date. I think, or meeting. I think it needs to come very natural. You need to be honest. You need to know the context. You need to know what your goals are, and you also, depending on the context, need to be very clear with what your goals are.
Yeah.
Right? Like, is it a hangout session that you want it to be a date? Or is it a business meeting where you at some point have to ask for the sale? Because if you don't, you're not going to get that sale. It's not that difficult of a thing to do with practice. So we gave a lot of decent piece of advice here. We also I have a whole standard operating procedure for a first date through ChatGPT. I thought it was very.
No, you do not.
I searched it. I searched it for our notes.
Let's hear it.
Hold on a second.
We're out of time.
I'm just going to say, if you're going to use that standard operating procedure on a first date, you must say, by the way, I got all this advice from ChatGPT.
I think you should bring it. I think you should print it and bring it with you.
Yeah.
Yeah. Full booklet.
Laminate it just in case you do spill some of that vodka on there.
Get the T-shirt too.
I was just really, I said, should you have we're running out of time. Should you have a standard operating procedure?
My answer is no.
I was like, I wonder if there's one out there, and that was it. All right, guys, that concludes this episode of the Midnight Society. of SipTalk, and we will see you next time. Adios.
All right, laters.
Bye.
All right, you made it this far into the episode, which is now actually the end of the episode. But if you made it this far, I want to ask you to go over to SipTalkPodcast.com, check it out, answer the bar trivia question, buy us a drink, and don't forget to subscribe so you catch us next time. Adios.